So, zooming into our very first presentation on sustainability, leadership at Greenhill-GIMPA's ambition and inclusive green growth. You would all agree that Greenhill is very beautiful. Oh, you haven't gone around to see it. You don't agree with me? I mean, you can smell sustainability here, can't you? So please, let's welcome Professor Ebenezer Adaku, Deputy Rector of GIMPA, for this presentation.
Thank you so much. Honorable Ministers of State, fellow academics, captains of industry, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. Good morning. Oh, I said good morning. It is an honor today to welcome you all to Greenhill, a beautiful hill of learning, a beautiful hill of dialogue, and a beautiful hill of public service. As we gather to reflect on one of the most urgent leadership challenges of our time, and that is how to build sustainable and inclusive growth for Ghana and the continent of Africa. GIMPA has a unique mandate, and it is to develop leaders for the public, private, and third sectors, as well as supporting management, capacity building across these sectors. Today, I want to set out a case well grounded in data and concrete examples as to why sustainability leadership must be central to the mandate and how GIMPA is stepping into this role and what we must do together, that is academia, industry, and government, to most importantly realize inclusive green growth. Ladies and gentlemen, permit me to highlight why sustainability leadership matters now. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the climate and development challenge is not an abstract future threat. Indeed, Ghana's greenhouse gas emission profile, energy transition, and economic ambitions show that the choices we make today will determine opportunities for jobs, health, and resilience for decades to come. Recent national inventories indicate that Ghana's emission and energy dynamics are substantial drivers of its development trade-off. Ghana's updated nationally determined contribution, NDC, bundles about 47 mitigation and adaptation measures aimed at reconciling development with climate goals. Further, international assessment highlight the job potential of a green transition across the continent. Green economic growth could generate about millions of new jobs in renewables, construction, manufacturing, and services if we invest now in skills and infrastructure. For West Africa and Ghana specifically, the green shift is both a risk and an enormous opportunity to create decent employment and more equitable development. Ladies and gentlemen, GIMPA, because of its focus on leadership, management, and public administration, is strategically positioned to translate these micro challenges into feasible, locally led solutions. But leadership here must be more than rhetoric. It must be evidence-based, cross-sectorial, and committed to inclusion. Ladies and gentlemen, what are some of the examples of engagements and institutional ambitions here at Greenhill? Please permit me to share a few of them. At GIMPA, we have already begun converting intentions into actions. Over the past 2 years, the Institute has hosted capacity building initiatives on environmental and social risk engagement. convene policy dialogues on energy transition, and open Greenhill as a space for multi-stakeholder engagement on sustainable development. These activities are not peripheral. They are core to our mission of public leadership and management training. Two practical examples illustrate what institutional leadership looks like in practice here at GIMPA. First, capacity building on environmental and social risk. GIMPA's short courses on environmental and social risk management have trained African practitioners in assessing the impact of projects and integrating safeguards in their planning, strengthening the ability of both public agencies and private developers to manage social and environmental risk on our projects. Second, policy dialogues on energy transition. The GIMPA Center of Excellence in Public Utility Regulation, (CERPO), brought together regulators, utility providers, academics, and industry to deliberate on smart and fast energy transition. Specifically, the multi-stakeholder conversations is needed to explore how Ghana intends to navigate energy affordability, reliability, and decarbonization from a collaborative perspective. These efforts show that a university's role in sustainability leadership is threefold: to educate leaders, to convene debate, and to generate applied research that shape policy and practice. Ladies and gentlemen, one will ask, are there evidence and case studies at all highlighting what works and what the gaps are? Oh yes. I'll start with the first case study here at GIMPA, Greenhill, where I'm going to highlight how responsible resource consumption in a higher education institution is driving sustainability here at the Greenhill. Ladies and gentlemen, for about the past 3 years, GIMPA has been pursuing a paperless policy where internal administrative processes and communication are engaged with electronically without the use of physical papers. This approach continues to save the Institute the need for physical papers, toners, and attendant printing resources, translating into nearly about 2 million Ghana cedis in savings in operational cost and on annual basis. These lessons matter because as the only self-financing public university in Ghana, such savings provide the Institute the fiscal space to respond to pay rise and to pay decent bonuses to staff across all levels, demonstrating a commitment to inclusive growth and at the institutional level. Ladies and gentlemen, the second case study will focus on green jobs and skills. Regional reports indicate that green economy could generate millions of jobs across Africa with a high share in renewable and skilled roles. But Ghana and other African countries currently capture a very small fraction of global clean energy finance. That mismatch underscores the need for deliberate skills planning, industry, academia, training partnerships, policy instruments that unlock private capital for local manufacturing and services. GIMPA's mandate to train managers and public leaders can be leveraged to design and run national upscaling programs required for this transition. Ladies and gentlemen, are there proposals at all for us to move forward? Yes. I'm going to be proposing a 3-pillared framework for sustainability leadership at GIMPA. Ladies and gentlemen, based on these cases and national priorities highlighted, I propose practical framework for GIMPA's leadership role. One that other universities and partners can adapt And it has 3 pillars. 1, the pillar of knowledge and education, where we argue that it should encompass curriculum, skills, and applied research. So under this pillar of knowledge education, I will talk to you about 3 sub-pillars. Integration, number 1, integration of sustainability across curricula. Every management, public policy, and leadership program should explicitly cover ESG principles, sustainable finance, and green procurement, as well as impact measurement. Case-based teaching and deliberate internship arrangement with regulators and private sector will make the learning applied and contextual. Second, scaling of lifelong learning and micro-credentials. To capture green jobs opportunity, we must rapidly scale short courses and credentialing in renewable technologies, green appraisals, carbon accounting, and social safeguards, designed with industry and accredited by regulators and stackable towards professional diplomas. Ladies and gentlemen, the 3rd sub-pillar will be investment in applied research units. GIMPA should expand its research capacity to undertake policy-relevant research, green jobs mapping, and public sector transition planning. I'll talk about the 2nd pillar, the 2nd main pillar of partnerships and innovation, fostering industry linkages and financing pathways. And here, I'll talk to you first about how we need to co-design skills for jobs with industry. The private sector must co-design apprenticeship and training, ensuring graduates meet firm needs. These programs should be monitored for outcomes, specifically looking at employment and wage improvement, and this should be scaled up. Again, there should be mobilization of blended finance for demonstration projects. GIMPA can act as a convener for pilot projects. For example, community solar, energy-efficient public buildings, or agro-processing upgrades that demonstrate business models and de-risk investment for private financiers. Ladies and gentlemen, I move to the 3rd pillar, where I highlight policy and public engagement, ensuring evidence in action. Here, I also focus on providing policy advisory services. GIMPA must strengthen rapid response policy teams that can provide evidence and modeling to ministries and regulators. This should include cost-benefit analysis of mitigation options, distributional impacts of energy reforms, and design for green fiscal instruments. Again, GIMPA should be focusing on convening multi-stakeholder dialogues. We've already started doing that, but we need to strengthen that. We need to ensure effective public policy, which requires that trusted conveners of all stakeholders in the green energy space will be coming here regularly to deliberate, think about how Ghana will navigate its green transition conundrum. Ladies and gentlemen, one will ask, are there concrete proposals that GIMPA can focus on in the next 3 years? Yes, they are. Number 1, GIMPA should launch a green leadership academy. And these are proposals that other organizations can also emulate. In the next 3 years, we would like to launch a GIMPA Green Leadership Academy, where executive programs for senior public officials and corporate leaders on ESG strategy, green procurement, and climate risk management will be addressed. This academy will combine short modular courses with applied capstone projects in partnership with ministries and the private sector firms. Ladies and gentlemen, in the next 3 years, GIMPA will be focusing on establishing a Greenhill Innovation Lab. At this lab, we will produce targeted policy briefs on green jobs, energy sector reforms, and sustainable value chains, and to also run pilot projects that demonstrate scalable business models. Outputs will be open and disseminated to policymakers and the industry. Ladies and gentlemen, in the next 3 years, GIMPA will create industry-linked micro-credential pathways where we will ensure stackable competency-based courses in renewable energy project management, carbon accounting, and sustainable supply chain management designed with private sector partners to guarantee partnerships or placement pathways. Again, we'll be focusing on operating a green finance incubator in the next 3 years. Here, we will convene impact investors, banks, and innovators to design blended finance instruments that de-risk local green projects. The incubator will provide technical assistance and standardize project documentations. Finally, in the next 3 years, GIMPA will be convening a national Greenhill Forum for inclusive transition. This will be an annual policy forum that tracks progress in Ghana's NDC measures, that is nationally determined contribution, green job targets, and the social impact of transition pathway, thereby producing an annual public scorecard to inform policy. Ladies and gentlemen, each of these initiatives requires collaboration. Universities only provide knowledge and convening power. Industry commits to skill co-design and deployment, while the government provides an enabling policy and financing environment. What should be the roles for each of us as audience here? Number one, to my academic colleagues, let us build interdisciplinary programs. Let us pursue applied research that answers policymakers and industry's real question, and prepare students with both technical and managerial competencies. Let's develop new course models underpinned by meaningful academia-industry collaboration. And to industry leaders, I will encourage you to partner with universities very early to co-design curricula, offer internship and guarantee placements, fund demonstration projects, and bring practical project problems for our students and our researchers to solve. To our policymakers and regulators, please create predictable, transparent policy frameworks and incentives that lower the cost of green investment. Co-invest with the private sector in skills and infrastructure, and use universities as agile knowledge partners for policy, pilots, and evaluation. As I conclude, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, sustainability leadership at GIMPA is not just a slogan. Indeed, we consider it both a responsibility and an opportunity. Ghana's nationally determined contributions set out about 47 measures to reconcile growth with climate action. Our job here is to translate those measures into practical programs that create jobs, reduce vulnerability, and most importantly, uphold justice. GIMPA is ready to lead, to convene, and to innovate, but we cannot do it alone. I invite each of you, scholars, corporate executives, policymakers, to join us in building the partnerships, the curricula, the pilots, and the policy tools that will make an inclusive green transition real for Ghana. Let us use Greenhill not only as a campus, but as a laboratory of leadership, where ideas meet action and where next generation of sustainable leaders is trained to place justice at the center of impactful growth. Long live Ghana, long live GIMPA. I thank you.
Thank you so much.